Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Hi, Katie. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here on the Finding the Magic Book podcast. We might have a little friend down there. We might see from time to time. You might see their wagging tails, but we'll keep going with it. So tell me about your book. How many you've written, your genre. Jump in.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk about this all day. I'm so happy you asked. So I write young adult fantasy in the magical medieval fantasy world of Alcara. I've written over, I don't know, like 60 titles at this point. So I know so many. There's so many at this point that I have someone else keep track of the numbers because I'm just too busy writing the next one. And they all take place in the same fantasy world. They spread out across 5 or 6 series. I have a like a magical school. It's like a female Harry Potter and a medieval haunted forest. I have a Dragon Rider trilogy. I have a reader request series where readers can write in and ask me to write a short story or rewrite a scene from a different perspective. That's a really fun series. And I have follow-up series to other ones. So I have so many fun and amazing series. We're just wrapping up a 10-book series, and it's a continuation of a previous trilogy that was a reader favorite. So if you like dragons, if you like magic, if you like witches, spells, potion, and like a medieval epic fantasy feel, I am totally here for you with Alcara.
Fine. I love it. I mean, this you're talking all the things that I love.
Yep.
So, and tell me how this started. I mean, did you mean for it to be like 60 books in this whole world, or what was
No,
the plan?
I was just talking to a reader like 2 days ago in Canada on Zoom, and he was like, "Did you write like a 10,000 page book and you're just like slicing it now?" And I was like, "No!" Like I had no idea Alcara was going to be this big. So basically, what happened was I was a pediatric nurse. I worked as a charge nurse. I worked on a medical floor, and I traveled the world, and it was amazing. It was awesome. And then I married the army, and we had to move all the time, and we moved like every 6 months for a while. So working as a nurse was almost impossible. So I was like 25 and like the hottest summer of my life in like south of Atlanta, Georgia, and I couldn't get a job as a nurse because we just got there and we're going to be moving again soon, and I had a puppy and I had no idea what to do with my life. So I was like, well, I've been writing ever since I was in first grade. I would write stories in a notebook, and so I was like, I'm just gonna like write. Like I'll just keep writing this book I've been working on. So I did that. I wrote and I would like cut out pictures from magazines and make like a fantasy like book. I mean, it was like it was pretty fun. I look at it now and I just laugh at myself. And I wrote that book and it was horrendous. It was awful. So I had a couple of people read it and they were that like, yeah, it was good. That whole like don't know how to break it to you, Katie. So then I was like, oh, I'm just gonna scrap it. I'm gonna do something else. That's not my book. So I was on this website that's kind of like Wattpad where you can just like post stories and people can read. And it was for authors. So authors would post like a chapter, other people would critique, and you could learn how to write. So it was kind of cool. So I did that. And then there were these contests that you could win. So I submitted this like first chapter for a story that had magic in it. And people loved it. They loved it so much they were asking for more. So I started writing more and I wrote every day and I just wrote a chapter a day. And it turned into my first book, which is Miss Mabel School for Girls. So I took that, bundled it up, edited it, started looking at publishing and just like, I don't know, I'm going to try this, right? Like I still don't have a job. And I ended up publishing it and figuring out the whole self-publishing process and like, how do I do this myself? How do I run a company? And then that was almost 10 years ago that I started doing that. And then I got the first book out and I was like, time for the second. So I started writing the next one. So really, it's a decision born of like in the moment, I don't have anything else to do. I'm just going to try something new. And here we are 10 years later. I have a team of 10 to 15 people that help me run this company. We have 80 titles to our name, 60 of them in all, or like 60-ish are in Alcara, and we're taking over the world. It's just really fun.
That sounds so exciting and cool. Like, I love that story. I'm right there with you with South Georgia. I grew up in South Georgia, so definitely know the summer heat
Mhm.
and how crazy, no, I won't say how crazy that can drive you, but what it can inspire you to do, right?
Oh my gosh, it was so hot. And I grew up in the mountains of Idaho, right? So like we're like getting bloody noses because it's so dry. And all of a sudden I have this really curly hair and I'm in humid like South Georgia. And I was like, what is happening? What is this humidity? I can't breathe.
Fine. Yeah, when I started writing after my kids went to bed because I was bored and I didn't want to watch Netflix all the time. So I was just writing for myself. And that was sort of the same story. People pushed me more to write because, yeah, they thought I needed to publish it and I eventually did. So that was fun. But, and I'm so interested, like, so I had a YA fantasy series, and the reason I did a spin-off series is because I just couldn't let my characters go. Like, I was like, I want to keep living in this world. So I love that you've like created all these different, can we say, factions of your series, I guess.
And that's really been born from my readers. So I let a lot of my readers make the decisions in what we do. So, I'll say, "Hey, we're finishing up this series. What do you want next?" And I'll give them like a list, actually on a Google form, and I'll email them and say, "What do you want next? Here are your options." And I put stuff on the list that I'm excited about, but I know that they're excited about, and then I leave a place for people to request. And so as I do that, they tell me what stories they want. And so I just write the stories that they want. And normally they're the same ones I want because they want to stay with the characters. So a lot of Alcara is really born out of like reader desire. So it's really fun when I'm writing the books that everyone is collectively like, well, now we need that story, or we need this romance, or let's do there was 40 years between two series. So they're like, just bridge that gap. And I'm like, oh yeah, like that's so easy. Just bridge the gap. 40 years. But that's how the 10 book series came about. And so these like separate series that talk about different time frames in Alcara are actually coming from the readers, which just makes it really, really fun.
Very cool. We'll set up Alcara for us.
Yeah, so Alcara begins with Bianca Monroe in Miss Mabel School for Girls, or you can start into Alcara in my Dragon Master trilogy, which is the first book is called Flame. And it's this medieval fantasy world that has this really big forest right in the middle of it. It's called Leadham Wood. And there's all these kinds of creatures. There's forest dragons up north in the northern network. So Alcara is divided sort of into kingdoms, but they're called networks. The northern network has like all the mountains. It's very much like a Himalayan kind of like feel, just really big, really high mountains, very alpine, and then some lush rolling hills towards the edges. On the left, you have the Western Network, which is mostly desert sands, kind of like red rock, like southern Utah, sort of like a feel. The Southern Network is very Arctic and like ice driven. It has like a very short summer that's very beautiful, green and lush, but then most of the year it has a lot of snow. There's Arctic bears that live there and that kind of stuff. And then in the Eastern Network, you have more of like a Spain Mediterranean influence, kind of like Eastern Network feel, where there's more rolling hills and greenery and marshes, and kind of more like the US South. Like you kind of get some of that, more of that feel, like a coastal influence along the Eastern Network. And there's all kinds of magical creatures. There's all kinds of magic. So magic in Alcara is really fun. What happens is the magic's like everyone is a witch and everyone can do magic. And the magic stems from grimoires. So a witch will find a grimoire with all the spells. They learn how to use the spells and they use it. So there's thousands and thousands of grimoires. So there's lots of different magic systems. And some of them are in common use and some of them aren't known, or they're secreted away and people don't know about them. So anyone can do magic. And there are all these different interplays between the different networks, and like it's kind of like kingdoms fighting. You have a high priest and a high priestess that rules each network, although some networks don't allow women to rule, and some networks are only ruled by women. And you have a lot of just very normal people that are living in this magical world with magic and trying to just figure their life out. So Bianca, which is where a lot of people start, Bianca is 16 years old and she's inherited a curse. It will kill her on her 17th birthday unless she convinces Miss Mabel, who is the head witch of this magical school, to remove the curse. But Miss Mabel refuses and forces to make Bianca fight for her life. So the next 4-book series is all about Bianca conquering this growing evil in the land. Bianca was so loved that she ended up getting another 4-book series years later. So unlike you, I finished Bianca's series and I was like, I'm done. Like, we're out. We resolved it. Boom. And then my readers were like, And I was like, really? Because I went back in time 100 years, the way my readers ask, and I wrote the Dragon Master trilogy. And then they were like, we want more Bianca. I was like, what? Bianca's done? Like, we got all this other stuff. They're like, no, more Bianca. So I was like, okay. So I did a four book series for Bianca that follows. And now she'll have 20 books by the time I'm all done with her. So yeah, I mean, and then, you can go back 100 years in time to the Dragon Master trilogy, which is where Sana and Isadora, who feature in Bianca's series, are two young girls. One finds a wild dragon, one finds a new magic, and they have to save the world together. And it's like this sisterhood. It's like a story of sisters. If you have a sister, I don't have a sister, but usually women that have sisters like love hearing that. It's a story of like two sisters basically breaking family bonds and like going into the world to discover themselves. And one does it with dragons and one does it with magic and a slow burn romance. So that's kind of Akara in a nutshell.
Fun. And what type of technology do they have? Is it present day technology or is it, you said medieval, right?
That's medieval. So we're like candles, wooden houses, big forests, like hunting for meat. There is like some agriculture and farming and that kind of stuff. I mean, they have like they have candles, but the magic actually acts as a sort of technology, right? So there are magical spells where they can like sort of have a light, they can form a ball of light for a little amount of time. But really it still has that like medieval sort of the grit and raw of the medieval setting. And a lot of it is set in this Leadham Wood, this magical forest where the trees are like bigger than sequoias. I mean, we're talking like multiple houses could fit inside the trunk of one of these trees. They're just huge and they're enchanted. So there's not as much technology as much as like just raw, gritty earth magic sort of stuff. But the magic can do things that our technology does in a way.
Right. Can you like cross portals or talk to people?
So we have transportation. So you can go from like transportation spells, you can go from one place to another. It's a little bit dangerous. You have to be really skilled and you have to have been at the place you're going for it to be safe. You could transport somewhere that you've never been, but you might end up anywhere, right? Or you might not come out of that magical spell. There's a very special magic that's only used at one place in the central network, which is where most of my stories take place in the central network, which is where Bianca and Sana and Isadora live. They call the Brotherhood magic. There's a brotherhood of 10 to 13 men that form the Protector Force, which is kind of like a spy network for the central network, and they work for the high priest or high priestess at the time. And they have a thought transporting magic where they can transport a thought into the mind of another witch that is specifically in this brotherhood. But they can't, like, there's no mind reading of like that kind of thing unless you have like a really dark, nefarious magic that allows that. And that comes at like a high cost sort of deal.
Oh, neat. That's so exciting. I mean, how do you keep track of all these details? Do you have like multiple files and networks?
Oh, I have this like monster spreadsheet, right? So I have this like giant spreadsheet on Google Drive and it's so big that I can't even like open it unless I'm online because it's just too big to cache, right? So it has all these tabs. I have a timeline. So every single scene in one of my books has a column. And then I just say, like what chapter, how many days have passed since the previous scene, what season of the year it's in, and I have like 3 words that explains what happens in that scene so that I can track as I write these books like everything that's happening over the great timeline because I have like a huge timeline. When you have like 60 titles, there's a lot to keep track of and a lot of them like all connect. Some of my titles too, I'll have like I mentioned a witch named Vittoria in one of my books in the Dragon Master trilogy and she's just like a historical figure in Alcara. Well, my readers wanted her story, so I gave her an entire novel explaining who this witch was. So I have to like keep track of her in time because I established all this canon, right? And then I have character profiles in a tab on that spreadsheet and like magic and grimoires that I mentioned and currency exchanges and like leadership in the network, the high priests and high priestesses, the ambassadors, like all the political stuff. So I keep track of it as I write so that it's just always available and it makes writing really fast. I launch a new novel, so an 80 to 110,000 word book the first Friday of every month. So I write really fast. And so like that efficiency of being able to look at the spreadsheet and fix it is really important.
Yeah, a novel a month. That's amazing. I can't even, you need this whole machine, right? To make sure you keep up with everything.
For sure. Yeah. And that makes it really easy. Plus I have an editing team that helps me keep track of all those facts and figures in the book. And they help me like kind of fact check and make sure, well, you said this in this book. or you know, they'll kind of skim the PDFs or like search for stuff for me if I haven't, or if I say to them like, double check me on these spells or double check this for me. I've checked it, but I want someone else to look at it. And that kind of helps keep track of things so it's all really smooth and consistent.
That is so fun. Yeah, I can imagine that your readers are just like, okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm getting the next book now.
They're so spoiled.
Yes, I would say you've checked off all the boxes for your readers. What do you want next? Bing, it's here the next month. What do you want next?
Oh, and it makes it so fun because they get what they want. And I'm like always happy to write in Alcara, right? I just love writing. Like I just love writing. I'll write 4 to 5 hours a day. And so when I'm love what I'm writing and I love the world and they love it too, it's like the coolest relationship because like, hey, I'm kicking out this story, I'm kicking out this story. And I meet with my readers over Zoom calls once every week, 4 times a month. So there's like 4 different calls that we hop on. And I just ask them, like, hey, we do book club twice a month too. So then I can hear, like, what did you like? What didn't you like? What do you want to see more of? What do you like? What are you really wanting? So I can sculpt Alcara to fit the vision of all these like readers that really escape to Alcara and find their courage there, which is what I want. That's why I write.
Oh, well, okay. So you just answered my question that I love to ask all authors is like, what do you want your readers to get from reading and your books? And so we have a little bit of that. Do you want to expand?
Oh, I love talking about this. So I feel like one of my great purposes in life is to bring Alcara to the world, right? So I always tell my readers and my team, Alcara doesn't belong to me, it belongs to all of us. I'm just the person that got out of the way first. And now like Alcara belongs to other people. So I have illustrators, I have co-authors, I have movie producers, I have all these people that are now working in and pulling at Alcara from different ways because it's not supposed to be mine. Alcara exists so that people can come into it and find their courage and escapism again, right? So I have all these readers almost like at least every week, if not every single day. I get an email from a reader that says, I needed Bianca. Like, I found you at just the right time. Thank you for writing about Sana and Isadora. Whether I was just diagnosed with cancer, I just lost my husband, I just lost my daughter, my house just burned down. Like I've heard all of them. Like I've had moms that are in the hospital while their child's getting chemo. Like I've heard every sad story where people are saying, I needed somewhere to go and you gave it to me. And you're always coming up with more books. So I feel like I always have somewhere to go and I'm just so grateful, right? And in these books, I reflect our life. Like we're all struggling to understand and find courage, right? So what I want for my readers is for them to step into Alcara, find a place to escape and see themselves and just build that courage again, right? Because in fiction, like problems end. Like you move on. Like there's magic, right? Like there's Bianca has a flying carpet. It's so cool. Like all this really cool stuff happens and we can put ourselves there so that by the time we put the book down, we can take a deep breath and like, whew, I'm ready to go. Like I got a big thing tonight. I got to go face it now, but I've got some courage again. So the whole reason my team and I exist at this point is to just bring Alcara to the world so people get that. We want to put goodness back into the world and we do that through Alcara.
That's so exciting. That's so touching. Yeah, and that's why I read. Like I have this one series, and I'll admit it's the Vampire Diaries on Netflix, and I have watched it literally probably like 20 times now. My husband's like, "What is the deal?" I'm like, "It's comforting.
Mhm.
I know what's gonna happen. I know the bad things. I know the good things, and yeah. When I'm done, I can go back and be like, well, and in the real world, problems usually do end. Like when you're in the middle of a problem or when you're feeling something, it really feels like they're not going to end, but they do. They resolve. Your feelings change. You grow, and they do. But sometimes you can't see that when you're in the middle. But seeing that in a fantasy world can help too. So yeah, I love that idea. That's
Yeah, and
cool.
that's such a beautiful way to put it, right? Like we get into the thick of loss or grief or addiction or whatever it is that we're battling, and we just think there is no end to this. I'm going to battle this forever. But and maybe you do, right? Like maybe you have this addiction forever, but it changes and you change, and the intensity will probably lessen for a while, and maybe it'll come back up. But you always have like these things to go back to, like what you said with Vampire Diaries. Like I do that to The Office or Golden Girls or like anything that I'm like, it's just comforting. I feel like they're my friends. Like I know them. They make me laugh, and I know what's going to happen. All the same things you said, right? I have the exact same things where you just go somewhere to feel safe and happy and belong. And that's what our mission is to create Alcara for people that need that.
This sounds amazing, super fun. I'm gonna dig in right after this. I'm gonna be like, and I think we met or we got connected through Clean Authors, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me a little bit about do you do a lot with clean authors or, um,
No, I just started this year. They approached me to see if I'd be interested as they kind of got off the ground, and I liked their premise and I thought it sounded interesting. And honestly, I really joined it because I knew my readers would love it. So I write clean YA fantasy, which is kind of an important distinction because YA, like young adult fantasy as a genre anymore, it's like a lot of people are like, what kind of YA is this? You know, so I don't really say like it's clean, like my kids could read this. And my readers love that about it. One of the feedbacks that I get the most is I tend to draw the readers that really kind of want just that more like clean, but still real. Just like they don't have to work, like they don't have to think about sex or current day swear words or whatever that kind of stuff in there. And so I joined Clean Authors because I was like I would have access to more books for my readers that I could share with and more promo opportunities for my readers to enjoy. And so it seemed like a really cool opportunity for my readers to find more fiction that they loved. And so anything that positively impacts my readers, I'm like here for. So yeah, we tried it out.
yeah, good. Yeah, I joined Clean Authors exactly for that reason because I love reading clean and I love watching clean. I mean, even Vampire Diaries kind of hedges on the not clean side. It seems like some of those YA shows definitely will, but yeah, for people that just want to live in this fantasy world and just enjoy it, I think, and those readers can be anywhere from 13 to 85. It seems
Yeah.
like the the book that I thought my mother-in-law was going to like the least, she was like, "Oh no, I like this one the best." And it's like a 15-year-old fairy. So
Oh, you never know, right? So most of my readership is actually, they always email me and they always say, I'm probably the oldest reader you're ever going to meet. And I'm like, unless you're 95, no. Because most of my readers are like in their like 50s to 80s. Those are the people I hear from most. Although I definitely have teenagers and moms, like middle, like 20 to 30 something moms. And I have like some younger kids that have tried my books too. But really YA, especially YA fantasy, tends to draw like any age, right? It's just that I feel like the YA fantasy part of that is just notating really what where in life the characters are starting and what obstacles you're going to kind of see for them for sure. So yeah, it's all over the place.
and so you talked about the different time frames and Bianca, and it sounds like you followed her for at least 14 books. Is that right? So does she grow up and does she have a family? Is she no longer a young adult, or how long do these? It sounds like they live a long time though.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so with Bianca, she only has 8 books right now. So she went from like 16 to 23 or 24. And then I have in my brain about 20 books for her. I don't know that I could do more, but Alcara always surprises me. So we'll just see what Alcara comes up with. But I think what we're going to be moving Bianca through the life stages, right? So we saw her as like a young desperate girl trying to save her own life. We see her in the growing pains of like adulting sucks. Like what is this? And like romance that went wrong and how do you do that and what do I really want in life and who do I want to be is really in that second series Bianca's answering the question of who do I want to be because she's setting herself up there. The next one is going to be her like establishing I know who I want to be so now how do I do it, right? And we're going to start seeing more like relationship stuff but more settling like as you kind of move through. So I plan to move Bianca sort of through the life stages to a point until it just doesn't make sense anymore, and I anticipate that in about like 20 books. Now, Sana and Isadora, they are the Dragon Master trilogy that happens 100 years before. What happened there was they die at like 120 something. They're pretty old because they've lived in this magical forest and there's something called their sister witches, which gives them like sort of a special magical designation. And they're just twins, right? They're twin girls that have this like sort of enchanted blessing. But anyway, as sister witches, they live a longer life and they've lived underneath the canopy of this magical forest. And so they have this long life. Well, what happened is I had their 3 book series and I was like, we're done. But my readers like, And so for years they were like, we want more Sana and Isadora. And then there's like a big gap of time between when that trilogy ends and the next story picks up. And they wanted that gap bridged. And so that's why I said, all right, we'll do a 10 book series. It'll cover 40 to 50 years. We'll bridge the gap and we'll do it from Sana and Isadora and Max's point of view. So Sana, Isadora, and Max actually have um the 3 books in the Dragon Master trilogy, the 10 book Sister Witches series, and another book that I slid in there that they were requesting in between. So they have 14 books and then they'll be done. Like we're gonna have to, there's nothing more I can do for them. I mean, I could, but we're gonna leave them there. And then I have emails that'll be going out soon to my readers to say, hey, this is my launch schedule for next year. What do you want to come next? We have like the next, I think, 5 books planned out, and then we'll see what they want to go to. I'm positive they're going to want the next Bianca series. So we normally like go to Bianca, bounce to someone else, go back to Bianca, bounce to something else, so that there's kind of like a break.
Fun. And I'm glad that I didn't make up 14 from somewhere. So
You didn't. No, you didn't. That was really good. That's a lot to keep track of, so I'm impressed.
and now I forgot my question that was next. But yeah, so that's in my mind oh yeah, I do know the other question. So when you sit down to write, you know what you want to write. Do you know every scene that's going to be there, or do you have some creativity within that day that you're writing that chapter, or
Yeah, great question. So
detailed as your outline?
I do like a 5 to 8,000 word plot structure for every book before I dive in. So I'm pretty like scheduled in how I approach writing. So I really look at writing as a job. And like I write sometimes 5 to 6 hours, like literally at my computer writing, I'll write 5 to 6 hours a day because it's a job. So what I'll do is I'll do a 5 to 8,000 word plot structure, and I just know like my main plot points, arcs, like shifts, character growth, goals, motivations for villains and characters, and all that kind of stuff. I'll kind of have it all plotted out in my head, and then I'll just write like the scenes. So I'll have like a small paragraph that says in this scene, blah 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 happens, and maybe there's just a single sentence in the next scene, like reaction to the previous scene, so some of them are like an entire page of ideas because it's a really big scene and I don't know for sure where it's going to go, but I'm just going to throw stuff down that's in my head. And then sometimes I'm like, something happens in capital letters for a scene, like I don't always know, right? Because I need there to be room to breathe, but I can't have so much room to breathe that I'm deciding as I write, because I need to get into the flow of writing and just let the story come out. So that plot is usually done before I'm ready to start writing my first draft. And when I sit down to write my first draft, I have it all structured out in my writing software, Scrivener. And there's like each scene gets a totally different document, and all the documents display on a sidebar on the left. And so then I just like go from document to document. So what's really cool about it is I know where the story's going for the most part. There are definitely stories I go into and I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to end. I have literally no idea how this is going to end, but I just have to start writing because I can't figure it out. And I'll figure it out on the way I trust myself. So then I'll just start writing so that I get to like discover the scenes as I go into them, but I know what kind of needs to happen. So it's like, oh, okay, Isadora is going to go in here. She's going to have a conversation with Nell. I have no idea what Nell is going to say, but in general, it kind of needs to go this direction. And then I get to just discovery, right? Like what happens in the scenes, but it moves the project forward with great efficiency because I know where the story's going overall. There have been times where I have to like go back and delete something like entire scenes or delete stuff, but very rarely because I've done this so much and I have such fast turnaround on my writing that I've really honed into like a flow and a system that works for me, and I've maximized my efficiency at every step. So for the most part, I get to plot it out and then discovery write each individual scene and just see the book come together. After that, I do 3 drafts. So I get the first draft, which is really ugly. The second draft, which is where I'm cleaning everything up. I'm entering the data into the spreadsheet. I'm checking my timeline. I'm looking at details. I'm like rounding it out. I'm pulling the foreshadowing in. I'm looking at inner conflicts, outer conflicts. I'm resolving everything. And then I pull it all into one document. I put it on Google Docs so I can see it in a different way. I change the font, and then I go through for a third draft. And once that third draft is done, I send it to my editing team and I say, make it pretty. And then I totally forget that book exists for like 3 weeks while I write the next one. And they're like editing it. And then I go through, edit it, and then I narrate it and we launch it.
Oh, fun. So you narrate, so you do audiobooks as well?
Yeah, so I'm like, this is actually where I'm standing here. If anyone's like listening and not watching, I'm standing in my closet, so like the lighting's not super great. I have this huge microphone, but I narrate my own audiobooks, which is also something that my readers were asking for. I noticed that audio was really hard to like nail down, like because you would have someone else doing it, and if you wanted to launch your audiobook at the same time as your ebook or paperback, you had to like have it done way in advance. You had to be coordinating and paying, and there's like so much difficulty to it. So I just didn't do audiobooks. But I had all of these readers that were really disappointed, and they're like, why aren't you doing audio? And when I explained it, they were just so sad. And I was like, there's gotta be a better way. So someone said to me, why wouldn't you could you narrate your own? And I was like, I could. So I started like looking into it, and I found this class, and I started taking it. I found a bunch of classes, I took them, and then I found a mentor, and he and I would like talk over Zoom, and he would critique me and I would send him files and I would practice. I'd like walk around my house reading books out loud. And then we got my whole setup done. And So Arthur is my guy. I said to Arthur, I was like, at the end of this, I just every single month want to send you files. You make them pretty, send them back, and then I launch an ebook, audiobook, and paperback together. I just want all of the books to come at the same time. So my audiobook readers know they can trust me. Because audiobook readers are like, who knows when the audio is coming out, you know? Like I feel bad for him. Like, you never know. Like your life is just winging it. You can't escape into Alcara because you don't know what's coming, if at all. So that's what I did. I like got that mentor, I put it all together, and it's my favorite part of the process now. At first I was like, imposter syndrome, this is terrible, I hate it. But I really worked through it, and in the end it's turned out that narrating the audiobooks is like my absolute favorite part of the process. I get to act it out, I get to make my characters come to life, all that fun stuff.
Oh, that is super fun. Yeah, I love listening to audiobooks, and I've loved hearing I hired a narrator because my voice is, and maybe I could take classes and do it. But yeah, so I love listening to my books, and it's super fun because I get to relive them all over again. And
Yeah.
And I guess we could jump back to the other topic you were talking about, discovery writing, because that's what I find. Like, some people tell me they like have like everything written out, they knew exactly what's going to happen. And if I had that and I sat down to write, I'd be like, I know everything that's happened. It would be boring to me not to have some kind of discovery and let a little bit of creativity in there, because that's why I like to write, because it's creative. So
Yeah, that over like if you plot too much, then you're like,
yeah, and what's left to do? Well, it's kind of boring to sit down and write.
and that's I just hacked it by like leaving so much open for individual scenes to get that discovery writing, and then the project still moved forward, and that works for me. I wasn't always that way, and maybe it'll totally change in the future, but I'm excited it works now.
And I think you touched on this a little bit, but if people are just discovering you, which books would you start with?
Oh, definitely Flame. So if you go to my website, katiecrossbooks.com, then you can get Flame free in ebook or audio. Just sign up and I'll send you both, right? So you can have both. And then there is like a list of like suggested reading order on my website. So if you go to ebook, paperback, or audio, no matter which one you hit, they're all listed in our suggested order. And that suggested reading order came from my readers. And really, a lot of them argue you should start with Miss Mabel. Some say Flame, but I really like Flame. And this is why. So if you start with Flame and you read all the way through, everything will be new. You'll be discovering everything as it goes, right? But if you start with Miss Mabel's, and you can, then you're going to know stuff so that when you go back, there's stuff already known to you. And for me, I don't think that's as fun, but some people are totally fine with that. So it kind of depends on how you want to read, but we always push people into Flame, the first book in the Dragon Master trilogy.
Cool. Yeah, that's how, like, I wrote a prequel, but I wrote it after like the third book in my series. And I'm like, well, you can start with the prequel, but if you start with the prequel, then you'll know something that you weren't supposed to know. So
exactly. Yeah. And it would be fine because I wrote them with Miss Mabel's first and like Flame, Flight, Freedom second, but it's just way better for maximum impact. It's better to start with Flame.
Fine. So it's katiecrossbooks.com, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And they can sign up for the free book of Flame, which is, and it's chronologically, that's the first book, right? Okay.
Well, there's like other books that happened before that I've written, but it's really just better to like sink into Flame, Flight, Freedom and go. And then you can always go back to the other ones that happened before later.
Super fun. Where else is the website the primary person or place to find you?
Yeah, that's the best place because you get the reading order, you get a discount from all the retailers. If you have any questions, you just email me directly. You can get the ebook and the audiobook for free, but I'm anywhere that books are available. So ebook, audiobook, paperback, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, like Kobo, Audible, all of those. I'm on all of those places. But if you like the discount, and there's a whole bunch of books and titles that my readers asked for that are only available on my website. So a lot of them are like fleshing out a romance or like taking a side plot and adding more to it or making it bigger, answering questions that they're not available on the retailers. They're just available on my website.
Fun. Well, I think there are going to be tons of listeners that hopefully will click over. I know I am going to click over. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about Alcara, so thanks for indulging me.
Oh, no, I love learning about these worlds. That's kind of what I live for. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.